Discover College Soccer is proud to have VO as a partner, and on February 22nd, VO is launching a game changer in sports tech, and you are invited to the exclusive online reveal that will happen at 2 p.m. Eastern on February 22nd. Get ready for a major leap in sports recording and live streaming. We can't wait to see you there. I can't wait to hear what they have in store for us. Just click the link here in the show notes, and we'll see you there. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Discover College Soccer. Today, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Coach Baker from Florida Atlantic University. Welcome, Coach.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Doing well, thanks. Good to see you on the screen. Got to see you, I guess, a couple months ago at the Tampa Super Cup, so that was fun, and
Yep.
was really
Good event.
excited to be able to see you guys play in your conference tournament they held over at Premier. So that was fun. Did you guys like that, having that kind of neutral site conference tournament?
I think well we did.
Yeah.
First year having it there. Um, you're gonna kind of have some transitional, I mean, I don't want to say issues, just transitional things that pop up,
Yeah.
I think a lot of us appreciate the fact that none of the institutions have to host it. Because there is the pressure of putting on a wonderful event, right, for the student athletes. But I think there are so many conferences that are going to a separate destination. All roads lead to wherever,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so all roads leading to Lakewood Ranch was pretty cool. And so many of our girls had played there as youth players that coming back again and playing important games was really nice. The weather was great, so that always helps.
Yeah.
One or two coaches complained it was a little too warm during the day, but I was like, well, better to say that than the alternative, in my opinion. But that's just us Floridians talking.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and you got a couple of the area girls on your roster, which is great. But we saw each other kind of after that, and the ECNL event was there at that same facility, and so we're in the
Yep.
throes of recruiting time right now. So give me a little bit of sense in terms of your overall recruiting calendar, right? So you when do you still have some one or two 24s you're trying to lock in? Has that been done and dusted for a while and you're really hard on the 25s? Are you even writing down names of 26s? And what does that
Yeah.
look like right now for a Division I program?
Yeah. I would say ours is probably a little different than most, because um, we do always try to keep one or two spots, you know. We do a lot with international players. And so that timeline takes a longer time. Um, and hopefully you get to see them. And of course, you're doing a lot of this with them and their parents. Of course, it's an easier sell, right? You're like, hey, we live in Boca Raton, the weather, and they're like, so there's only one flight and they're going to be in sunshine the whole time. They're like, where do I sign? So from an international standpoint, it's a nice thing. But yeah, going with recruiting, I would say all the above. Like, we're jotting down names of 26s that we can't communicate with. Probably it's a sweet spot, for the 2025 class. Of course, there's always the odd story sometimes. I shouldn't say odd. There's the interesting story. I think at the end of each recruiting class, that's something I always tell our staff, we gotta always be prepared because you never know, when someone unfortunately might leave your program, but on the flip side, there may be an opportunity to bring someone into your program. So yeah, so from a recruiting standpoint, it was great to have the dead period. I wish that was around when my kids were younger. Coaches now they don't even know that there wasn't a dead period, during the holidays. So probably aging myself there, but you come out of that event and you're hitting the ECRL event there in Orlando, you're hitting the ECNL event, Lakewood Ranch. You've got a lot of the clubs are doing their own ID camps, which is great. Of course, colleges are doing the same. You're getting your team ready for spring. And you want some second looks at some of the 25s, you go to one game and you say, wow, and you come back the next game, you're like, where's the player I saw yesterday? Or where's the player I saw at the last event? So, Just kind of building the consistency, I would say, of evaluations with a lot of the young ladies is kind of a big thing right now in the recruiting process.
Well, and you mentioned ID camps, and I know, your staff is active at some of the I guess the multi-school camps, and I know you guys are hosting your own here coming up in a little bit and later in the spring. So how important are those ID camps? Kind of is it one of those things where kind of the order of operations is player reaches out, you try to see him at a tournament, you say, you know what, let's come to the ID camp, and like, is there kind of a process that you tend to go through, at least with the domestic players?
Um, I think it's a two-part. Let me just address the clubs having them. So it's great because if the club hosts it, right, then all their age groups can kind of be involved, right? And it's great for the families, the patrons, right, the paying customer, that they can see a lot of college coaches, hopefully, in their own backyard, right? So limited travel, and for us, it's really important as universities and colleges to get to those different places because um, that's how we've built FAU women's soccer is with the in-state talent. We've dabbled internationally, but when we first got here, first of all, our roster was 65% out of state. Now, Matt, we're at a state university. That shouldn't be the case. Um, we had horrific recruiting stories. One of the best coaches in the state of Florida is Mike Pickett at St. John's Country Day up in Jacksonville, right? And my predecessor, he brought to my predecessor 3 recruits on a weekend and said, "Hey, we're coming down, got 3 recruits, we want to tour the campus." And there was a no-show on campus. So Coach Pickett toured campus, showed the girls around, right? Left the note, put it on the coach's door. He's still waiting for a response. And this is 15 years later, you know? So I'm like, well, at least we can show up and meet people, right? I mean, at least we'll be able to do that. And so the clubs, it's massive because they are a lot of times dictating the message to the players, right? And so if we never show up at any of their events, it's very hard for them to know who we are and what we represent and how our season's going, right? Um, and then on the flip side, us being able to host, the girls get to be around us individually, maybe a little bit longer. They get to meet our players, which I think is huge. They get to be in the facilities and be kind of like, okay, this is a potentially like a day in the life of what it might be like. Like if, you mentioned, Nikki, my assistant, if people meet Jeremy or Nikki or myself and be like, hey, this is a staff that I think would help me, as a student athlete in my future, well, then great. Um, Maybe you come to campus and you realize I just don't want to be that close to the beach, you know. I don't want to be that close to great shops and whatever, I don't, whatever it might be. But I think that's the other piece, sometimes people are like, well, when do you care when someone visits? And we're like, we really don't care. We're all going to kind of be the same when you visit. So, as long as we get a visit, and I always tell recruits, if you visit us, the greatest thing that can happen is that when you leave with mom or dad, is that you say, hey, I'd like to go back for a second visit, you know, um, because you're probably not going to say, hey, I want to commit. You're going to get married after your first date. No, so, hey, and I think the thing, Matt, that young ladies and young men for that matter, but we're talking about women's soccer. So I'll say young ladies, the young ladies really are struggling with is there's this like, they feel like they're in a pressure cooker and the clock on the wall is ticking, and they look at social media and they see people are committing and this and that, and why not me? And I feel bad, I really feel bad, because you hope everybody makes the right decision, but a lot of times, they don't. And that's why the transfer portal, which I don't even know we'll get to, but the transfer portal is over 1,600, women's soccer players. That's nuts, you know?
Oh, I agree, and I was going to ask if you guys look at the portal at all in your recruiting and how it's kind of changed maybe the way you fill classes, and is there a roster size you're trying to hit each year to so you're using the portal to fill in and kind of how does
Yeah.
that look for you guys?
Well, our cycle when we first got here to FAU, we were like Noah's Ark. We needed two of everything. We needed two center backs, two forwards, two wide midfielders, two goalkeepers. So we were like, come
Yeah,
on, come all. And so we've had this every 4 years, is kind of our cycle. But that's also when we've been the most successful. We build, 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 build. We've got this great class. And because we've had that kind of big class every 4 years, um, it's just kind of stayed with us. To your point, would it be nice if it was like 6 or 7 players every year and it just stayed that way? Yeah, but COVID changed a lot, as you well know. The portal has changed. Now with the new legislation, Matt, they're claiming that you could go to a different school all 4 years. I'm sorry, every 4 years you could go to a different school. So you could play at University A, then go to College B for year two, then you go to another place for year three, and then you do your final year or year four. I'm like, well, that's not what, but it is kind of what is happening sometimes at the club level where people jump, right? And now
absolutely.
you're allowing them to jump in college. And, you know, we've I know this isn't what you're asking, but about the portal. So we've only had one player in 3 years with undergraduate eligibility to jump in the portal.
Wow.
I think that says two things. Number one, um, people enjoy it here. Like they enjoy their student athlete experience. They feel like they're being challenged educationally, being challenged with their soccer. They're growing and developing. On the flip side, there's too many, and I would say this if they were sitting on this call, there's too many coaches that after one semester are like, you know what, you're just not panning out and you should probably get into the portal. To me, it's like, where has the development gone? Like you made a commitment, they made a commitment to you, right? And unless they've just come in and just been absolutely, the worst player, the worst teammate, you know what I'm saying? Like, okay,
Yeah.
there's that conversation. But if they're truly trying hard, like you gotta at least give them a year or two, be like, we've done everything, you've done everything. We're just at a crossroads. Maybe it's playing time. Hey, if it's really playing time that you're interested in, let's help find you another home, right? But it goes both ways. Don't get me wrong, right? Because players will come in after a semester and be like, it's not working out, and I'm leaving. And then on the flip side, coaches are coming in, having player meetings, and they'll come in and be like, hey, listen, you didn't even make the travel team this year. You should look for another school. You're never going to get that great story about, hey, as a freshman, I was here. As a sophomore, I was here. I really got it when I was a junior. And then I became this unbelievable captain, starter, and led our team to the conference championship or an NCAA bid. That story is going to be well lost, I'm afraid, or it'll be a much smaller percentage than it was, which is kind of a shame.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's tough. It is tough, and you see it very different, I guess, approaches at different schools, and then you just see these numbers and the constant churn. And what's sad is
Yeah.
how many of them never end up somewhere else, right? But
Yeah.
but it is what it is.
And unfortunately, there's some administrations that are like, hey, just win.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
the
Yeah,
portal is part of the solution, then if they're not good enough, then you have every right to let them know. I,
yeah,
I, I totally understand that,
yeah,
but I guess when you have kids of your own and you've got my son currently plays in the college realm, and you just look at it differently,
yeah. Well,
and I get it. If it was your own child, you'd look at it differently too, right? But I know looking at mine, I always feel like if one of our players is sitting across from me, I'm like, is that my daughter? If that was my daughter, and I have one, if that was my daughter, how would I want this conversation to be
yeah,
handled? You
yeah,
know, and you're not always going to get it right, but you're trying as best you can. And yeah, I think that's another thing. They talk about graduation rates. I think they should talk about transfer portal rates. How
yeah.
many you keep and how many go in. I think it
Ab-
says a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Coach, let's talk a little bit more about the school. You mentioned it's a gorgeous spot, Boca
Yep.
Raton, and you've been there for a few years now. Kind of, what do you what do you think are some of the great things about Florida Atlantic? Maybe some stuff we wouldn't even know just by going through the website.
Well, one of the things that we always share with people when they come to visit is, you know, we're located. We call it the Boca bubble. You know, Boca Raton. It's a very affluent area, beautiful houses, cars, shopping, restaurants, you name it. And right smack in the middle is a major Division I university. You know, so it's not a sleepy college town, right? And it's not a downtown. So it's unique in that way. If we were conversing right now and you're like, Coach, I lost track of time. I got to meet my wife at the beach for, a quick, whatever, quick coffee. You would call me back in 10 minutes, feet in the sand, coffee in hand, holding your wife's hand, being like, okay, Coach, we can resume that conversation. So our location, right, and overall climate is attractive because it's a tropical paradise, right? As most places are in Florida. People sell the sunshine, but like we are literally like that close to, the beach. And so having players that are loving the outdoors and of course love the water, it's always a big thing. We actually the premises of the campus was actually an Air Force base in the 1960s, and it went defunct as an Air Force base. And then the state of Florida wanted to open up a major university somewhere in South Florida. And so they didn't choose a current existing university. They created Florida Atlantic University, which used to be an Air Force base. And there's actually still a couple barracks on the backside of campus. Um, we actually had, now again, this was like, 50s, 60s. There's tunnels under our campus. Now you can't get in them now, but back then, spies were big. They would come over. We're so close to the water. Spies would just hang out at the bar or the restaurants and trying to hear what, the Air Force people were saying. And the actual very first threads of anthrax were developed on our campus because at the Air Force Base, they thought they were going to wipe out Russia and their wheat fields by using anthrax. But so there's certain places on campus that if we'll be on a golf cart tour with somebody and be like, hey, that's one of the big vents that goes to the tunnels. And you wouldn't know it, like unless you were like with us and we're pointing it out, you would just assume like it's an air duct for something or a sewage line or something, just like but I also would say from the campus standpoint, it's a very walkable, bikeable, skateboardable campus. It's not like because it was an Air Force base, there's actually no roads that intersect the middle of campus. So it's kind of always it's like an onion layer, and the middle of campus is protected. And then, there's parking, and then there's a big loop that goes around campus, housing inside and out of it, athletics. They did keep the runway from the Air Force base time, but now it's just a private runway. But we train right next to it. Our stadium's right close to it, so sometimes you'll see a plane, dropping from the sky, appropriately, and they'll think, "Well, that's landing really close," but it's because of the Air Force base so long ago.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. I didn't know that. Um, well, let's talk a little bit more. You mentioned the practice right next to it. Let's talk about the team and kind of the overall soccer side of things.
Yeah.
You mentioned your assistant coaches. Kind of talk more about your staff and maybe any support staff that in the athletic department that also help out with that team. What does that look like?
Well, we just we just moved to the American Athletic Conference, and a great move. Of course, it was football driven. We were in Conference USA. So when we got here in 2013, we were making the jump from the Sun Belt to Conference USA. And it was like, hey, how you gonna beat North Texas? Who's gonna beat North Texas? And we managed to kind of make our mark in that conference, which was great. But they've also, along with ourselves and four other schools, a total of six altogether, have left Conference USA to join the American. And Memphis is a fantastic program. I don't know if you've had Brooks, but he would be someone I would recommend, who's just doing an amazing job. And so I think, now it's like, okay, who's going to get Memphis? And so now being in this new conference, we know that we've got to recruit differently. Systematically, I think we'll be okay. But even if you look at the end of this year's standings, the top four teams were all returners from the American Athletic Conference. Charlotte, who was in Conference USA and made the leap, they were fifth. Tulsa, returning team from the American, was sixth. We were seventh, and we probably had the youngest team. And then UAB was eighth. And so to us, it just showed how strong the strength of the conference, because so many of the returning teams fared well, you know. And so this kind of year, this was like a kind of get to know the conference and feel things out a little bit. And of course, even last year you didn't play everybody away. So this year we'll see some teams for the first time at their home places. So even this year will be like an introductory year of kind of how to find, all the different venues. But the conference has been great. The venues have been phenomenal. Jeremy and Nikki are kind of like my two right hands. Jeremy just joined us, but deals a lot with our goalkeeping and our back line. Nikki's been with us for a couple of years now. Won a championship with us in 2019, and kind of leads our recruiting efforts and just does a great job. Also works with our forwards within our system. So love our staff, and that's we found out as we were looking, because the NCAA has just allowed for a third assistant. And so it's been interesting to find out who in our conference next year will have the third assistant. And of course, we're not there yet, but we're hoping to. But love our staff, and I think our players would tell you that everybody has everybody has a voice, and Nikki can lead the team, Jeremy could lead the team, and the culture. I think the culture is key. We have multiple T-shirts every year that change with our camps, and it's called "Live Like Champions." And it's not like go to school like a champion. It's not like play like a champion. It's live like a champion. Live your life like a champion. We want to be great in the classroom. Our GPA last semester was a 3.68, 3.68 for the team. We had 30 players, and then we had, there was no Yahoos. There was no outlier. Everybody had above a 3.0. Now that doesn't get the kind of coverage, Matt, it should, because to me, the academic prowess and what the girls do in the classroom, right, is just, if not more important than what they do on the field. But everybody looks at that piece first, right? Because that's where you're looking at your social media, you're looking at the websites, right? And you're going to see, oh, this player did this player did this. So we internally try to, as much as we can, promote what our girls are doing academically and socially. We want to be darlings in the community. We've always said that it's very hard to ask people to come watch us play, especially early when we really didn't have an identity. Now we draw quite well. But you gotta go to others first. You gotta reach out to those, right? And so just doing things throughout the community on an annual basis is really important. But we hope by doing that, then they'll come back in the fall and support our players in a big way.
Yeah, great. Well, but now I got to train the guns on you. How would you describe kind of your coaching style and what you're trying to implement there within the team?
I've always said that if someone were to show up in the stands as a neutral and not know which team was FAU and which team was of the opponent, I would hope that after a very short period of time, they would like a couple of things. And number one, the attempt to try to keep the ball, you know, um, how we press and counter press, I think is one of our strengths. And I get why people put a lot of, like goals out there, because I think goals are important, to try, and goal setting is important. But I've always said, if we win more than we lose and we're playing our best soccer at the end of the year and we're healthy, then we probably stand a good chance at being successful. And we've just kept kind of the recipe pretty simple. Um, we've invested in the state of Florida as far as our players. We played USF in the quarterfinals of the American, and you know, we were we played well and fortunate to win the game 1-0. But afterwards, one of the things that I did was I reached out to all the Florida club coaches that had players that were in our starting lineup, and I thanked them because 7 of the 11 that night were from the state of Florida, and I just think that matters. You know, um, we're a state institution, and you know, we want to grow and continue to develop our identity with in-state players. Um, and I think we're definitely a crossing and finishing type team. We believe in wide players. We believe in using the flanks, you know. We traditionally played out of a 4-4-2, but we've actually kind of transitioned playing in more of the out of the 4-3-3. But we play both, on the regular, and training we'll mix it up, and sometimes if we have an inter squad, one's playing one, one's playing the other, so we're never that very far from either system. But I also think now we're finally, probably 6 years ago, if I said, "Hey, we're going to change, our system," they would have been like, "No, what are we doing?" You can't change, but now I feel like we've introduced it long enough where we're very fluid and we can, make a substitution and they can walk on the field and be like, "Hey, we're moving to this," and no problem.
Okay, great. Well, I don't want to take too much of your time. I got one last question for you. It's pretty broad, but if you could just pick one nugget, one piece of information that you think is crucial for any parent, family, player going through the recruiting process to know as they're going through this journey, what would you want them to know?
I think you've got to be organized, and I think you have to be thorough in the process. What you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. If you put very little in and that you hope that everybody else is going to come running, it probably doesn't happen. There's a very small percentage of players that actually want to attend this school and that school recruits them. And so you have to be organized and you have to be thorough. So if you don't get that school, well, what is the second one, the third one, the fourth one, and how close can you mirror that? And enjoy it. That's the one thing that I just feel like I don't know who's the entity that provides the most stress, and maybe it's a combination of both, but I just feel like you've got to let your child enjoy guide them, be insightful, but they got to enjoy it because their happiness, I can attest to this as a parent as much as a coach. Your child, when they are happy, there's no greater feeling as a parent. And if they are not happy and they're jumping in the transfer portal, then it's probably done wrong and you don't want to have to do it all over again.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Well, Coach, really appreciate the time. Hopefully
Thank you, sir.
I'll see you somewhere along the tournament
Hopefully so. Hopefully so. Yep. Sounds good.
rounds in the spring. All right.
Okay, sir. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right.
Hi, everybody. It's Matt from Discover College Soccer. I hope you're enjoying the podcast, whether that's on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. I also wanted to let you know about the Discover College Soccer Study Table. This is our brand new online portal that is complete with a 14-part online course giving you all of the ins and outs of the college soccer recruiting process. There's also a wealth of resources such as checklists, templates. There's the spreadsheets that have every soccer program in the country along with their coaches, their contact information, their social media information, some basic stats about the school, and more. Plus, there's an online community where you can ask your questions, share your wins, your losses, any questions that you may have around the college soccer recruiting process. It's all there at the Discover College Soccer study table that you can find at discovercollegesoccer.com/study table, and hopefully we will see you there.